Hi, my name's Dan Keane. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Do you ever write a piece of music and you just think, that just sounds so beige? There's something about it, the arrangement's there, everything sort of fits, but you're just left feeling a little bit kind of lackluster. Well, for me at least, when I get to this point in an arrangement, I think about ear candy, in which I think has many definitions, but for me at least, it sort of means little textural trinkets that you can put around the outside, preferably out of the way of the main arrangement, but that just helps sort of give it a little bit more drive, a bit more vibe. I find often that I write pieces, the arrangements sound great, but then I compare it to a commercial piece and I don't know, it's missing something. So I think ear candy can be helpful just to help sort of re-energize your arrangement. Now this comes as a response to a question from a patron called Eric, and I'm really grateful for Eric's question because he was asking about blending ear candy with percussion, piano and strings, and I've written an orchestral piece of music and then I've incorporated some elements of ear candy. Now if you're one of my patrons, click on the link down below and you'll have free access to these sounds for you to use yourself. Now there are loads of ways that you can make ear candy yourself. Really, it's just about getting creative. You want something that's got texture, rhythm in there. That's the kind of thing that I think helps sort of elevate the production a little bit. Now I'm going to show you three main stages that you can use to make ear candy today. First of all, starting with household objects, then going through percussion, and then finally in the box, where you can take sort of pads and synthesizers, things like that, and then amalgamate them into ear candy like things. So I'm going to show you this piece of music first, and then I'm going to play it to you with the ear candy added. So it's big, it's broad. I mean, it sounds pretty nice, I think, so far, but it is missing something. I'm going to play you this section again, but with the ear candy added, and you'll see the various benefits that it has. So I played it to you there a little louder than I normally would have it in the mix, but you can see the sort of texture and the undulating rhythms that build. So I'm going to show you these various elements. And again, if you're a Patreon supporter, you can download these for free. Otherwise, maybe this will just serve as a little bit of inspiration for you. Again, this isn't necessarily my sort of go-to. This is just something that I thought would work well for this video. I'm going to start with household objects. And first of all, I'm going to show you these scissors. So on their own, it's literally just some snipping scissors. What I liked about this was the closeness of it. I recorded this with a small diaphragm condenser, and I've used the decapitator plugin with the punish setting on by Soundtoys, so really, really punchy. And then I've used that alongside an EQ just to help bring out the kind of lower frequencies. I don't actually think they were recorded. I think it's mainly the kind of elements and the artifacts from the decapitator that just help to bring that out. So this happens sort of on as a kick drum, I suppose. Now, alongside that, I've then got these snare scissors as well. I believe this was the same sample. But what I've done is I've decapitated it a little bit less harshly. I haven't used the punish setting. And then I've added the echo boy. And this just helps to add a little bit of an element afterwards. Now, when I combine this with the drums that I've got set up, you can see here that it just helps to kind of meld in with the snare drum sample. It's subtle, but it just helps to sort of build things. Next, I'm going to show you this drawer sound. This is literally just the sound of me shoving the drawer in my chest of drawers just straight in. And I've used this in a couple of places. First of all, I reversed the sound and then used that to sort of preempt the first and third beat. So as it's going into one, it's sort of, and that's when it sort of closes. Now I've taken this sound and I liked it, but it just wasn't quite kind of hefty enough. So I've actually tuned it down by 7 semitones here in the Logic sampler. I've then taken an EQ and just kind of taken off some of the high end and then boosted the low end. I just want to really make this sink into that downbeat. This works particularly well with the kick drum samples. If you listen here to the cinematic percussion, just helps sort of ground it a little bit further. Now I've used this again more as a snare drum sound. And this is on the 3, so 1, 2, and that goes well with the snare drum as well. So when you combine those two draw sounds together, you get something that sounds a little bit more cohesive. Now, I'm a big fan of using sidechain compression to give the feeling of sort of the weight of the sub and the bass. So I'm using this really as a means to just sort of have it kind of pump on that 1 and 3. Beats 1 and 3. Now, a couple of other sounds that I tend to use, which I didn't actually use for this arrangement, but something I often do, anything that is tappy, sometimes getting like a hard drive case or something with a pencils against tables, mixing bowls, things like that. You can tune them to the various notes in the chords if you want to, just to help give it a little bit of rhythm. I'd recommend getting an echo and then getting like a tremolo plugin, something that can kind of help give it a little bit more stereo width. I'm going to move on now to my percussion, the things that I've used here, and normally I would get shakers, triangles, I mentioned the rain stick, anything just to add a little bit of texture, but in this case I've actually gone for some cinematic percussion. I use cinematic percussion anyway, mainly as a sort of as a drum kit. This is more as the sort of ghost notes. Now this is actually from the Storm Drum 3 kit by East West. It's something I've had on my system for years and I just always end up using it on stuff. This has got some chimes brass, bongos and a 12-inch Remo Tubana Nushin. So you can see here that I'm really sparing with the way that I've used this percussion. I find that if I've got lots of elements that are used sparingly, that sounds better to my ears than 1 or 2 things that are just really loud. Now moving on to the in-the-box things, I'm going to plug 2 piano book libraries that are free for you to download. The first of which is the Thrumming Textures electric guitar library, and this is an absolute love affair of mine. So you can see here that in the EQ, I'm just boosting where the plectrum's really hitting. I don't want to get too much of the low end, don't want to get in the way of the arrangement, as I said before. So I've cut off from those low frequencies as well. And then the way the library sort of works, it sort of tends to build, it tends to undulate a little bit. So I've used a bit of compression just to sort of help even things out a little bit. I find that with this library, because it's so random, but it's sort of gentle, it bubbles away, it works really well as ear candy, just to support the narrative of the way things are sort of moving along. You can see finally here that I've just added a little bit of tremolo. I'm not going 100% left and right, I just want it to kind of bounce around the middle. 68% seems to be fine for this. The second pad that I've got here is something that doesn't actually have any rhythm to it normally. This is the Basic Backdrops, which is another free piano book library. And if you listen to this, I've taken out the ADSR, so it's really quick attack, really quick release. I just wanted to get the main kind of harmony in there. But what I've done in the processing is turn it into this. So the first thing I did is I took on the Echo Boy. I wasn't actually using it for the echo itself. I was just using it for this cheap tape saturation. I really like the way that sounds. Next, I use the CQ just to take out the low end, boost up in the high mids here at 3.5K, and then really boost the high end. And I'm also using the drive feature here, which I really like. Next, I've got some tremolo, and I've got 2 instances here. The first of which has 0 degrees phase. So instead of going from left to right, it's more just sort of coming in or out. And with this, I've got it set to an 88% depth, 16th notes, and you can see I've smoothed it 1%. I find with 0, you can sort of hear the sounds of it cutting in and out, and I want it to still sound a little bit smooth, so I've got that set at 1%. The second instance of tremolo here is just to create a little bit more of a stereo image, so I'm boosting here up to 61% depth. depth, so it's quite a wide stereo image in total. Then I've really boosted up the high frequencies and I've cut off at about 8K because it just gets a little bit kind of brittle. And then the thing that really sells it for me is this LFO tool, which I'm relatively new to really, but I really like the way this works. Basically, it's like a sidechain compression tool, so you can design the way that the waves come in and out, and I really like the graphic here as well. Now, it might sound a little bit counterintuitive at the moment, but if you listen to it with the cinematic percussion, it has that feeling of sidechain compression that sort of ducks right as the kick drum comes in. The final thing that I would recommend for you is just to take pre-existing materials and detune them. Figure out ways to make things sound a little bit more kind of nuanced. Take a sound like an orchestral sound, for example. In this case, I've got the first violin sultasto by the BBC SO library. I wanted to get a little bit more fragility in there, so I actually tuned it down by -18 semitones, so taking it really, really low down, and as a result, I've had to play it higher, so you get the really high samples. Now, I particularly like this with libraries that have a lot going on. In particular, things like the Orchestral Swarm library by Spitfire, the way that there's lots of stuff happening. If you tune it down, you can really slow those recordings down and it becomes something that's a little bit more subtle, something that I think works really, really well in this context as ear candy. So it sort of becomes this airy, sort of ethereal pad. All I've done to begin with is I've just compressed it a little bit, just with the Apple compressor. And next I'm just cutting off the low frequencies because we're tuning down, the noise floor also gets tuned down. So just sort of tightening things up a little bit, cutting out at around 270 hertz there, and then I'm just boosting the high frequencies. Next, I'm using the LFO tool in a similar way, just to kind of get that undulating sort of sidechain compression vibe. And then finally, I'm just adding a 16th note echo with the Echo Boy by Soundtoys, just to give it a little bit more rhythm. Finally, another thing that can really help add a bit of rhythm is just clicky keyboard sounds. So I'm starting here with the Wurlitzer. This is actually a keyscape library by Spectrasonics, and this is the 200A Wurlitzer. Now this is really great because it's got a Wurlitzer and mechanical mix mode. So I've turned up the mechanical noise, and I've also turned up the release noise as well. So you've got the kind of the key on and key off releases. Now if you play it right, you can see I've sort of just bashed around on the keyboard. So you can see here that not only have I quantized the notes to a 16th note, but I've also made sure that every single note is exactly a 16th note long. And this means that when I put down the note and then I lift it back up again, it's almost like it's playing a second semiquaver. If I play this with the click, so to achieve this sound, it's really, really simple. You just sort of cut off all the low end, boost those high frequencies where all that tapping is. You can actually hear a little bit of the notes in the bells that are being played, but I don't think it really makes much of a difference. And if anything, that just sort of helps add to the character. I'm not playing in the key that the piece is in, I'm just sort of bashing around. I've got a little bit of compression here just to help sort of keep things tightened together. And then I've got a little bit of tremolo as well, just to widen things. This time, because it's more of a kind of bitey sound, I decided not to use any smoothing. So it's really harsh between one side and the other. And then also just added a little bit more Echo Boy as well, just to kind of give it a little flavour, and I'm using the Memory Man setting in the saturation as well. For the clicky organ, it's much the same really. This is actually the vintage B3 organ from the Logic stock sounds, and in the options here I've turned up the key on, but I've turned down the key off, so you just get the sound of the note being suppressed. Now to help give it that little bit of rhythm, I've added another instance here of the Echo Boy, but I haven't got any feedback on, so it's just the single delay. And you can see here I'm also using the Memory Man setting. This is probably actually the same preset. I use it on so many things. So that just about wraps it up for this video. If you're a patron, go to the link down below to download these sounds for free. And if you're in the all access or above tiers on my Patreon page, you can also get all the stems from this project if you want to hear how I've arranged this piece. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please click the thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't done already. I've got lots of really exciting stuff to come soon. Stay safe, stay well, and have a great week.